An attorney for former President Trump blames the media for Trump's claim that he'll be arrested on Tuesday in Manhattan. In a statement to CNN, Joe Tacopina says, "No one tells us anything, which is very frustrating. President Trump is basing his response on press reports and the fact that this is a political prosecution and the DA leaks things to the press instead of communicating to the lawyers as they should." Now, this drama began earlier today on Trump's Truth Social page. After predicting his arrest on Tuesday, the former president urged his supporters to, quote, "take back our nation." And tonight, his campaign is already fundraising off of his claims, which have not been confirmed. There's no indication that he will be arrested Tuesday. Now, sources tell me and my colleague Kristen Holmes that Trump's legal team has gotten no word from the Manhattan District Attorney's Office about the timing of any possible indictment. Another source says the former president has been pushing his team to get the base riled up over the idea because he believes it would help him politically. CNN's Caitlin Polantz is following the latest developments in this long-time investigation into possible hush money payments.
Paula, Donald Trump does say that he is expecting to be arrested on Tuesday in Manhattan in this ongoing financial crimes investigation, but he actually doesn't know at this point in time. A spokesperson for Trump said this morning in a statement that there has been no indication formally from the Manhattan District Attorney's Office that Trump is about to be indicted or arrested. However, we do know that this ongoing investigation into possible financial crimes, maybe falsification of business records at the Trump Organization, all connecting back to that $130,000 payment that Trump's lawyer Michael Cohen made to Stormy Daniels to cover up things that she wanted to allege in his 2016 campaign. All of that investigation is nearing the end because Trump was invited to testify, which he had the right to do. He declined to do that. That is the sort of thing that happens at the very end of a grand jury investigation like this. But we do know that there is another witness coming into the grand jury on Monday, at least scheduled to be testifying. And so at this point in time, we don't know exactly when or exactly what charges may be approved or may be asked to be approved by the grand jury sitting in Manhattan in this unprecedented investigation that could lead to a criminal charge against the former president of the United States. Paula?
Caitlin Polantz, thank you. Meantime, sources tell CNN that meetings have been going on throughout the week among city, state, and federal law enforcement agencies in New York about security preparations in case Trump's predictions are correct. CNN's Polo Sandoval is outside the Manhattan Criminal Courthouse with more. Polo, CNN has learned that NYPD officials were briefed on security measures today.
Yeah, Paula, these law enforcement officials that are engaged in these ongoing behind-the-scenes conversations telling CNN that there are some concerns that they've raised when, or at least should we reach that point where Donald Trump would have to come here to Lower Manhattan to answer to any potential charges. And among those concerns would certainly be courthouse security. Reminder, we do live in a post-January 6th world. And so there are certainly concerns about the potential for demonstrations or rallies by Trump supporters, and that today's message from the former president could further galvanize them to take them beyond just peaceful protests and then resulting counter-protest perhaps. And that is why local, state, and federal officials, according to several sources speaking to CNN, are having these conversations about how they would respond. Another just fascinating wrinkle in all this, Paula, is one federal source told our colleague John Miller that the former president's Secret Service protective detail is also engaged in conversations with fellow agents here in New York City about what the logistics would look like in terms of transporting Donald Trump to the region, here to the Manhattan District Attorney's Office to respond, or at least to face any potential charges and go through the booking process just like any other way, which would include fingerprinting, mugshot photos being taken, and of course the eventual arraignment of a defendant. Obviously, because of the attention on this, it is expected that this would happen away from crowds, away from cameras. But we'll certainly have to see, of course, should we arrive at that point. But it just goes to speak to the fascinating and unprecedented nature of the behind-the-scenes conversations that are happening. Among those are obviously coming from law enforcement that are trying to sort of forecast where we would be should we reach that point. Of course, we're talking about charges being filed against the former president. Paula.
Polo Sandoval, thank you. And joining us now, CNN national security analyst Juliette Kayyem. She's also a former assistant secretary at the Department of Homeland Security. Juliette, of course, calling for protests is legal, protected by the First Amendment. But how much does the specter of January 6th hang over Trump's latest remarks calling for protests?
Right. And it's even before January 6th. Trump became an expert, or was an expert, in using language to incite without actually directing it. I mean, even for January 6th, it was clear what he wanted to happen, but he never said, to storm Congress and loot. And I think actually the language in his statement this morning, what was less troublesome is protest. That's fine. We're a democracy. Was his Take America Back language. That's directly from January 6th. But the language that he used on January 6th, somehow something's being taken away from me, and I have to fight essentially with violence to get it back. The times have changed, and Trump will begin to realize that. I mean, one is he's not in power, so he can't direct law enforcement agencies. Hundreds of people are in jail or been indicted. He cannot promise to pardon people. Law enforcement, as we're reporting, is clearly on notice. And he's thrown out this Tuesday day. I kind of doubt it. I don't, I mean, if they're honestly, Paula, if they're interviewing a witness on Monday, the Tuesday date is probably Trump wanting to have us all look at Tuesday. It doesn't happen, and him saying, look, they don't have it. So we just wait until there's actually movement.
You make a great point. And again, our reporting is there is no indication that there is an arrest Tuesday. His team hasn't been told that. And as we've been reporting, there's a witness coming Monday. But as Trump calls for the protests, the House Speaker, Kevin McCarthy, he's got on Twitter to say any arrest would be, quote, an outrageous abuse of power by a radical DA who lets violent criminals walk as he pursues political vengeance against President Trump. Now, how do those remarks play? Because really, he's talking about the potentially politically motivated prosecution, but Trump's calling for people to take back the country.
To the street,
Yeah, you can't reconcile with that, really.
Right, and I found McCarthy's statement pretty weak. I mean, I know people get upset by them, but okay, so you're going to have a hearing. Like, what aren't they having a hearing about, actually? I mean, look, I found it weak. I sort of viewed it as performative, like he sort of has to do this. But if you're Trump, and the Speaker of the House in your party is not saying what you would probably want him to say, which is not just that it's outrageous, but people should protest and this, protect Trump, you're going to be a little bit nervous. And I think we sometimes look at the smoke and all the people yelling and Fox News and think, obviously Trump is still popular, but everyone's going to take to the streets, and even worse, some of them will take to arms. And I think if you just sort of look back since January 6th, there's a tremendous amount of evidence as well that was the peak, and that he's just not able essentially to fill a room. Look at CPAC. We were reporting on CPAC last weekend. He can't fill a room where people pay to see him. So I'm, I think that McCarthy's statement, again, was performative.
Well, let's talk about the security concerns. If there is an indictment, if he does go in person for his initial appearance, as someone who's worked at the Department of Homeland Security, what kind of things are you looking at? Because that courthouse on an average day is a circus with high-profile defendants, as I'm sure you know. There's paparazzi, there's foreign press. It can be quite chaotic. What are they looking at with the idea of a former president possibly showing up there for an arraignment?
Right. So there's all the different pieces are going to happen in different locations as well. So first, just follow the threat stream, the intelligence stream. We don't know if other things might happen in other cities as well. So first is the Secret Service, which is put in a historic position, which is they would have to deliver the body of the president essentially to a new courthouse. So, and there's always been speculation about the extent to which in the past that group of presidential detailees had been sort of taken with Trump. That has changed over time. And I suspect that there is a lot of focus on who the personnel will be. Over in New York, you're going to have geographic control of the courtroom. I do not mean to make this analogy. It's just a helpful one. This courthouse knows how to prepare for defendants. It was preparing for Guantanamo defendants. It has had high-profile terrorism defendants. Trump is not one of them. This is a different kind of case. It knows how to do this with the NYPD. They know how to control the area around it, and then also those who legitimately have access to it. My biggest concern is, of course, for the people who are prosecuting this case. They will have increased security details as well. They are more vulnerable because they're just human beings doing their job, and they have families and things like that. So those are sort of the three areas that the security will be looking at.
And we'll see if there actually is an indictment and if it comes this week. Juliette Kayyem, thank you so much.